This podcast may contain explicit language. You do not know the power of the dark side. The Empire Strikes Back, next. Welcome to the greatest movie of all time podcast, the show that uses a unique grading style to redefine what the greatest movies are. I'm Tom Duncan.
And I'm Dana Duncan. By the way, Tom, I am your father.
How long have you been waiting to use that? I would swear it's multiple seasons.
I was not prepared for that, Dana. That was great.
That was brilliant.
So, we're off to a great and running start. We also welcome our returning celebrity guest, the first of the two, the founder of Westport Studios and host of the B2B Business Class podcast, making his 11th appearance on the show to date. It's Robb Conlon.
Hey, thanks for having me back, guys, for such a in such a short span of time. This is like week on, week off, week on, so it's kind of funny here, but yeah, wearing my 10 times shirt. Really happy. Fits great. And thank you guys again, as always, for being great friends and for having me here.
You want to model a little bit for the YouTube audience?
Absolutely. Let me move my microphone out of the way and we'll use this lovely floating desk to exhibit to you the greatest movie of all time t-shirt, which is yours if you guessed on greatest movie of all time 10 times and give 10 great opinions and performances. I don't know what 15 brings.
We have not yet determined, but let me bring in our second guest before we quite get to 15, because I do have some information on 15. But before we do, we also welcome our other returning celebrity guest, making his 6th appearance on the show to date. It's always a big deal whenever he comes in. It is, fists in the air, Andrew Corns.
You know, 6 times feels like a lot, and then I come in here with Robb, and I just feel like a young Padawan next to this Jedi Master. But I have a feeling tonight's going to be an epic conversation, and I'm going to put a little pressure on the 4 of us. I have the Gmote top 10 list right in front of me, and if this isn't in the top 5 by the end of this conversation, I'm going to be disappointed in our group.
And you know what? 3 of us probably feel that way. 1, it may be the outlier, but I'll let you figure that out, who that may be. So, we're starting off in a good place. Now, on to the topic at hand. We do have some information on an upcoming award. Is it award, gift, swag? I'm not sure what to refer to it exactly as our 15th guest appearance. As many of you who have been longtime listeners to the show know, we do give out periodic gifts. Hats are at 5, t-shirts are at 10. Robb and Kieran are the only 2 to have passed the 10 episode mark, other than my mother, who gifted herself a polo shirt at 10 because she didn't like the t-shirts for whatever reason, even though I think they're great t-shirts.
Are great t-shirts.
I'm not sure why she has such an objection, but whatever. She was the one picking out and spending the money and doing the logoing and all the other crap, so I'll let her do what she wants. But she did give me some information on what may be upcoming for 15. Apparently, we're going to go with the polos.
Interesting. I was going to say hoodies, but polo would be very nice.
Hoodie might be in the conversation at some point. I know that we have one particular member who was on last week's episode who's been pushing for gold jackets. That will never happen.
Like Kenosha Kickers style gold jackets?
No, like Hall of Fame, football Hall of Fame gold jackets.
I
like
don't understand.
A
I'm from
jacket.
Wisconsin. I don't get it. There's only one kind of gold jacket here, man. It's Kenosha Kickers jacket.
We have plenty of people in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I would object to that, but that's fine.
Well, so here's the question. Is it going to be Robb or is it going to be Kieran that reaches that 15 mark finish line first?
It'll be Peterson W. Hill.
Fast approaching in the distance.
And from the outside, down the fairway, or the
down the stretch.
Down the stretch. It's Peterson W. Hill.
Yeah. He has like 5 appearances upcoming in the second half of this year alone, and I think he's already at like 6 or 7. So he will be getting his t-shirt before the end of the year. We have a couple of people coming up that are bound to be getting their hats pretty soon. Jesse from last week is, I believe, supposed to get one on his next episode, and a mutual guest and friend of Robb's and mine, and that would be Walter, is
I
up
knew
for
it,
his
yep.
hat when he
Good.
does Toy Story 2 with us, I believe, in a few weeks.
Oh, that's a good movie to do with him.
Maybe he'll do more justice to it than you guys did to Toy Story 1.
And we're off. Okay, down the home stretch, and
We're so glad that we can offend you so thoroughly.
That's my favorite part of being here.
yeah, he just likes to burn the place down, much in the same way that I like to burn things down on his show. But anyway, for that matter, Andrew, do you have a rant for us, since I seem to always bring one to your show?
Not yet. Give it time.
Okay.
Well, I think one will be
We'll
coming.
let you build into it.
I still get multiple messages a week about the Fight Club episode. It comes up anytime I do a podcast guest spot. It's just, it follows me until the end of my days.
I'm glad people are listening, I guess.
Wow.
We need to get Michael Willoughby to do a remix of the Fists Raised to put up on YouTube or something. But anyway. All
Just
right.
make it a meme.
So, Robb, you have now been on for 4 different sequels. This is your
Yeah.
4th different sequel. And you have also readily complained about multiple sequels on this show. So I have to say, since you have such bad sequelitis for John Wick 2, for multiple Star Wars movies, in fact, you said that Star Wars ends with this movie.
Yes,
For-
it does. And the rest of you are, everybody else is wrong.
For every Alien movie after Aliens,
3 is okay.
well, okay. I've never seen it. I didn't feel the need to go past Aliens, but fair.
3 could have been great. 3,
Okay.
If they would have just turned Fincher loose and let him make what he wanted.
thank you.
But you helped propel a sequel to the top of our current list, as The Dark Knight still stands as the #1 film on the Gmote list.
With
I
good
have
reason.
to say, what gives?
I think we have forgotten the lost art of writing a good thing a second time. I think we've lost the ability in society to say, hey, I made something cool and I made something good. Now I'm going to expand upon it in a way that is thoughtful and planned, not injecting billions of dollars into a series that keeps going, making movies and television series for people who are not the primary fan base, and wondering why, when they don't perform well, what happened? Well, we didn't make this for the primary fan base. Why did it perform?
The most amount of comments we got on your last episode 2 weeks ago from Gladiator happened to do with the clip that I pulled of you complaining about sequels and how it seems that we expand universes when we don't need to. And yet, I think if I remember right, some of your most favorite movies, the trilogy of The Lord of the Rings, Aliens, The Dark Knight, The Last Crusade from Indiana Jones.
I love that
They're
movie.
all
Yeah.
sequels.
Right. But they're all sequels that are done in the right manner. Making 33 different Marvel movies about characters that are minor participants in the MCU, come on. That's not good expansion of a universe. Making movies that are well planned like this. Take the first 3 Star Wars. 3 years between each of them. They expand the universe each time. Now, I'm not too crazy about Return of the Jedi anymore because I'm not 11 anymore.
Wow.
Because, teddy bears. But I still think that there's a lot to it. It expanded the universe. That yes, there were other things like the Ewoks and everything like that. That's cute. That's fun. But I really think that we don't plan our universes as well as we used to.
Okay, so then why does The Empire Strikes Back work as one of the great sequels? And we'll open up the floor.
For us to all be swallowed down it.
Well, I mean,
We're not quite to the Sarlacc pit from Jedi, but
That's
okay.
Jedi, yeah.
I mean, it's pretty obvious why this movie is so important and so big in building on the first. And it's in the first movie, you spend basically your entire time on Tatooine, or then you eventually make it to the Death Star. And the beauty of Empire is we get all of this new planet building, and we get all of these different places that we've never seen. There's things introduced that they don't even, like the Bacta tank, they don't even have to tell us what it is, and yet there's this lore around all of these different items inside the Star Wars universe that are just there for the fans to kind of unravel the mystery of over time. And I think that's the beauty of this movie, kind of to Rob's point. It builds out the world, and it doesn't have to like give you exposition dumps. It just tells you what you need to know, and it also allows your mind to create your own questions and your own answers. And I think that's the beauty of these original Star Wars movies, is it lets your creativity expand the way George Lucas's did at the time.
I would guess it's a multitude of different factors. One, you're introducing new characters that are building on the original characters that, for the most part, feel fairly defined. But because their definition is manicured, then you're able to expand on those where you give them new difficulties, new problems, new challenges to deal with. And so to me, taking that extra step seems natural as opposed to forced, where you're just trying to recreate what was in the original. And so you're kind of making a sequel that actually is about something as opposed to trying to recapture the magic of the original. The next thing that I would necessarily say about this, again, the terrain is one thing, the expansion of the lore. You get Dagobah, which is like a jungle planet with swampiness. We get Hoth, which is the ice planet. We get Bespin and Cloud City. So there's just so much expansion on the world, but additionally, Yoda, Lando, Darth becoming a much bigger and more important piece. Even though I think he steals a lot of what's in the original, he becomes the centralized focus of the arc in this movie. And so I guess, what's the case for Darth Vader being the greatest villain in movie history?
I don't even know how you make an argument for anyone else, quite honestly, whether it's the look that is so stark. Obviously, James Earl Jones's voice just brings that character to a whole other level. The red lightsaber, just the color contrast between the black and the red. It's just a visual. And then, of course, the John Williams score on top of it. There's just this synthesis of, you couldn't create it in a lab. It's just this perfect concoction, this perfect alchemy that created this villain. And it really stems back to the first Star Wars, that he's the character that you first see at the very beginning of that movie, and they don't go out of their way to tell you he's the villain. You just can instinctually know, like, this guy is a menace and a terror. And the way that they build it into this movie, like, I'd have a hard time thinking of another villain his equal.
The AFI, when they did their villains ranking, I think in 2003, had him at number 3, behind Hannibal Lecter at 1, and Norman Bates at 2. I think you can make at least a case for Hannibal Lecter. I don't know about Norman Bates.
No, not Norman Bates. But, well, just how many villains can strangle people with just their mind?
Yeah, that's a very important part of this movie. While it's kind of briefly tantalized in the first one, you out and out see him do it to 3 different dudes in this movie. And it's like more shocking each time it happens. So let's dive in a little bit further and get into more of the background of the movie. Tonight, for our 261st episode, we continue our quest through a galaxy far, far away for the 45th anniversary of The Empire Strikes Back. I believe this comes out on the exact day of the 45th anniversary. Directed by Irvin Kershner, written by Lee Brackett and Lawrence Kasdan, music by John Williams, cinematography by Peter Shasitsky, starring Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker, Harrison Ford as Han Solo, Carrie Fisher as Leia Organa, Billy D. Williams as Lando Calrissian, Anthony Daniels as C-3PO, David Prowse and James Earl Jones as Darth Vader, Peter Mayhew as Chewbacca, Kenny Baker as R2-D2, Frank Oz as Yoda, and Alec Guinness as Ben Obi-Wan Kenobi. Background for the movie: The Empire Strikes Back was released on May 21st, 1980. The highly anticipated sequel became the highest-grossing film that year, earning approximately $401.5 million worldwide. However, Empire was met with mixed reviews from critics, and fans were conflicted about its darker and more mature themes at the time. Nevertheless, in March 1981, the Los Angeles Times released a summary of the leading critics' choices for top 10 films of the year, with Robert Redford's Ordinary People appearing on 42 lists and Empire appearing on 24. The Empire Strikes Back won the award for Best Sound and a Special Achievement Academy Award for Best Visual Effects. The film received a further 2 nominations for Best Art Direction and Best Original Score for John Williams. Subsequent releases have also raised the film's worldwide gross to between $538 to $549 million. Adjusted for inflation, it is the 13th highest grossing film in the United States and Canada. It has had a significant impact on filmmaking and popular culture and is often considered an example of a sequel superior to its predecessor. The climax in which Vader reveals he is Luke's father is often ranked as one of the great plot twists in cinema. Empire magazine selected the film as the 6th greatest movie sequel, lauding the bold, unresolved ending and willingness to avoid the same formula as the first film. Den of Geek called it as the 2nd best sequel after Aliens and hailed it as Lucas's masterpiece. Playboy named it as the 3rd best sequel, describing the disclosure of the relationship between Luke and Vader as the emotional core that has elevated Star Wars to the pantheon of timeless modern sagas. The BBC and Collider listed it as one of the best sequels ever made, while Time and Playboy described it as a sequel that surpasses the original. The American Film Institute ranked Darth Vader as the 3rd best villain on its 2003 list of the 100 best heroes and villains after Norman Bates and Hannibal Lecter. Filmmakers such as the Russo brothers, Roland Emmerich, and Kevin Feige, and actors such as Neil Patrick Harris, Jim Carrey, and Jude Law have cited Empire as an inspiration in their careers or identify as fans. The United States Library of Congress selected it for preservation in the National Film Registry in 2010, and Empire currently holds a 93% among critics on Rotten Tomatoes, an 82 score on Metacritic, and a 4.4 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So, normally as we start each week, Dad, what is your relationship to this film?
Well, I went and saw it at the theater. Can anybody else say that?
No, Dana.
So I remember going to the theater and big droves of people. I think I had a full carload because I think I started driving. I think no, I got to stop and think. Yeah, I would have been driving by then. So yeah, so I had a full carload. So went and saw it at the theater. Probably paid $2, $3 to get in.
Andrew, as I think the next oldest in our cadre this evening, what is your relationship to this film?
I could not pinpoint the exact first watch for this, as probably Robb and Tom, you'll be in the same boat just based on our age. Like, I feel like this movie has been woven into the fabric of me from childhood. Like, it was one of those movies I've watched so many times over the years on VHS tapes, and I could not pinpoint the first time. I would have to guess somewhere between 5 and 7. So we're talking 1990, 91-ish would probably be the first time I watched this movie. And it's hard for me also to parse this out from Star Wars 77 and then Return of the Jedi, because my brother and I would always watch the 3 of them in order. Like we would spend an entire day watching Star Wars and playing Star Wars and acting it out. And so this movie is deeply personal to me. It's probably this trilogy is probably the thing that got me into a love of movies the way that I have now. And Tom, not to spoil things, but you have some big special projects going on right now where you're having people rank the best movies of all time. And I can tell you Star Wars features very prominently in that list for me. This is just a trilogy of movies that means everything to me.
Robb, I believe you would be next up on our cascading list of age.
Yeah. Echoing Andrew, I can pinpoint when this was for me, but I'm thinking that you're looking for like an initial, like, when did you see this for the first time? And for me, I saw this in fragments initially. This used to be syndicated on USA Network every like Saturday in the month of May when I was at my grandmother's house, and I would watch this because I'd never seen anything like it before. And I always liked Return as a child. I always liked Return of the Jedi the most, not because of Ewoks, because I hate Ewoks, but because of the final space battle in that. And I didn't really understand the darkness, the intrigue. I always loved like the Hoth scene in Empire, but once we're off Hoth and going to Dagobah, it's like, all right, fine, we're out of here. But that for me, I can remember sitting very vividly sitting in my grandfather's den, wall-to-wall bookcases, plush couch, my little sister next to me, and we're watching The Empire Strikes Back. And there's ads and all sorts of dumb shit that's going on, but it's we're watching Star Wars. It's like 2:00 on a Sunday afternoon at my grandma's house, and it's great. I'm back there right now, actually.
So for me, I would also agree that I think I didn't see this in its full entirety for probably several years, but I had seen the end or the lightsaber fight multiple times. I don't know where I caught it, but I think about when I was 7, 8, 9, somewhere in that range, I just decided to watch the entire trilogy at one point and sat down on a weekend and plowed through all three of them like back to back to back. And for a while, until kind of a certain prequel came out, I had said this was always my favorite because it had the most involved lightsaber fight to me of any of them that I really enjoyed, was the ending fight between Luke and Vader. Now, my favorite Star Wars film has changed over the years. I think I said on last week's episode that episode 3 for a while had occupied that top space for me just because I loved the action. Again, what's better than a great sword fight and the way that the lightsabers are? It's one of the best forward-thinking inventions for film that I think I could have ever come up with. I don't know what Lucas was thinking for all of these various different things. He was just so freaking creative to be able to pull in all of this stuff, and it just works. But when you have the Duel of the Fates or any of these great John Williams scores in a background where there's a duel between two guys just going at it, I don't know. That's the most exciting thing for me always in Star Wars. Now, as I've aged and I've become a much more educated film fan, as I believe I mentioned last week, I went back when I was working on the prep for Andrew's show for 2005 last year and rewatched Revenge of the Sith. And it was very cringy, which disappoints me greatly. So it is no longer my favorite. I would say it's back to being Empire at this point. I think Empire slaps so hard. There are very few, if any, slow moments in this movie. It's just like a continually rising action throughout the entire course of the film, and it just has no off valve for me. But you can't really talk about Star Wars without talking about it in its entirety, really. So then, if we're going to limit this conversation a little bit more to Empire, what is Empire specifically about?
I think Empire is about the fact that the good guys don't always really win. I think that's what you can take away from this, is that you look at the first movie, yeah, they blew up the Death Star. There is still a galaxy-spanning bureaucracy and military force that's out there. You might have struck a decisive blow against their one Wunderwaffen, to use the term that the Empire evokes there, but I really think that Empire Strikes Back shows you that the good guys can win and still lose.
I would say what this movie is about is studios realizing how much fucking money there is in this kind of material after Star Wars and really wanting to get into something as quickly as possible. Now, 3 years actually feels like a long time compared to more recent films where they churn them out really quickly. But I do think there was an urgency to get another film out relatively quickly. And obviously George Lucas sort of had a vision for what he wanted to do with multiple films already. But I think that this movie is very much about the studio understanding how much money they had just made on Star Wars and thinking, wow, this is not something we're used to where we can suddenly make a franchise out of one film. And so I think this really boils down to just the studios changing the way that they thought they could make money on a global scale.
Well, especially a space opera. Like, was unheard of before.
I think it's about being the second chapter in a much more meticulously planned 3-part series or a 3-act play. And all 3 installments have their own rise and fall. You have the initial success, then you have the downfall, and then you have the redemption arc. And in a lot of ways, a lot of trilogies kind of act in this fashion. I guess the one lone outstanding one that I would probably say is Lord of the Rings, because it's kind of based on its own thing. But you look at the Dark Knight series, and that has kind of a rise, fall, rise action to it. And I think a lot of people follow this very same meticulous formula to how they build out their movie series anymore, because it's seemingly very successful. I think what makes Empire great, other than the fact that it was kind of the first one to really do this, although you could say in a way its sequel is very similar to Godfather Part 2 in that it takes a much darker tone. We're investing in the main character, kind of dealing with a lot of internal turmoil and conflict. And we have some new characters introduced to kind of give us some play on where the original characters who were defined were. I still think that this delves into its own gray area in a way that the original didn't. It takes the fairly bright, fairly established thing that everybody loves. And I can understand when this came out that people may not have immediately liked it, which I don't think obviously makes its way into the conversation anymore about Star Wars. Is, well, not everybody liked it immediately when it came out. Now it's just, we want to protect the OG Star Wars, because people came to it after the fact and realized it's part of a larger, complete story. But if you just had Star Wars, which you loved, and then this came out, I could see how it was kind of a step down. It was a tone shift. But much in the same way that you kind of need your heroes to be vulnerable in order to relate to them, this was a step in that direction. And I think it was a great move, not only just by George Lucas, but I think I also give a lot of credit to the screenwriters in this, in how they built out this story. That I think everybody focuses on the familial relationship at the end, but it's the internal conflict between all of the characters as to how we propel this story forward, so that they have to come back around and have resolution in the end.
In part, what this movie is about is the following. The studios thought Star Wars was going to be a complete bomb. They were going to lose money, and it went nuts and made them a ton of money. And so they're sitting there going, how do we get out of our own way? So they give Lucas a wide path to make a film. And they said, well, let's not just do it one. Let's go ahead and plan out two of them so that we can maximize it. So in large part, I think this film is nothing more than a bridge to get to the conclusion that they had in mind. I personally like the film, but I also think it's incomplete, because how many movies do you have where there's so many things left, just boom, it's just done, and you now have to come back 3 years later to find out what happened? Nothing is resolved within the film, which makes it kind of an incomplete aspect, which I'm sure, not just the darker tone, but the fact that nothing was resolved was one of the reasons why people and critics did not like this film. Now, in retrospect, I mean, how many people who ripped all over Sgt. Pepper's now go, oh, it's the greatest album. I knew it immediately when I heard it. It's the same thing with this. Nostalgia. It's why pregnant women never remember all the pain from labor. Otherwise, they'd never have any more children. So,
well, that was quite the analogy.
Yeah. So in this particular, well, and that's kind of what critics are. Some of them are they're just barking at stuff to make a point so that people pay attention to them. They don't believe half of what they say.
Andrew, you are the most critically, I guess, aggressive person on the show, giving your opinions all over the place. Do you somehow forget all of the shit movies that you see every month because there's one really good one?
I do, actually. I watch so many bad movies that they go in, they go out, and they're gone.
Yeah. So that's just my take on this. So in essence, in retrospect, when I look at this, we had a 3-year intermission between 2 and 3. And I mean, it gave you a lot of time. You could not only go out for popcorn and use the bathroom, you could take a really long trip to the bathroom, grow your own popcorn and cook it eat that bag, grow another batch, cook it, eat it, and then like raise the cocoa beans yourself to make your chocolate bar for the next one in those 3 years. And it
You
wasn't
could have
until
preceded that by
afterwards.
growing something else to make you need the popcorn, but okay.
That's true. Anyway, the point being is that this, to me, this is a bridge movie. That's what it's about. It is building the context to get to the resolution. And did they do it well? Yes, but it's an incomplete movie to me.
Okay, then I am forced to ask at this point, as we've been doing recently, Dad, do you like this movie?
Yes, I like this movie, but then
Yay.
again, I also like Ishtar.
Wow. Okay.
I knew that I'd get a reaction. Anyway, no, I like the movie, but I liked the movie when I saw it.
So if I gave you The Empire Strikes Back or the Pop-Tart movie to watch, which are you choosing?
Am I having a bad day?
Doesn't matter.
If I'm having a really bad day, I might watch the Pop-Tart movie just because it's so inane, it's hilarious.
All right, and Mugatru is about ready to come out.
It is funny bringing up. I don't know how we ended up on the Pop-Tart movie again, but about a month ago, I was laying in bed. It was late at night, and my brother texts me out of the blue, and he goes, "Hey, have you seen this stupid fucking Seinfeld movie about Pop-Tarts on Netflix?" And I was like, "Yeah, I have. It's terrible. It's my least favorite movie of all of last year." And he goes, "Okay." He's like, "I'm 30 minutes in. I'm done." So at least my brother knows what's good and what's bad.
Life's too short to watch bad cinema.
Okay, I'm forced to go in this direction. Dad, do we have a plot summary ready?
Yes, we certainly do. After their triumphant but costly victory against the Empire, the Rebel Alliance struggles to evade Darth Vader's relentless pursuit. Forced into hiding on the remote ice planet Hoth, they soon found themselves under attack, prompting a desperate escape across the galaxy. Meanwhile, Luke Skywalker, Mark Hamill, guided by visions of wisdom, seeks out the reclusive Jedi Master Yoda, Frank Oz, to sharpen his abilities and prepare for the battles ahead, as Han Solo, Harrison Ford, and Princess Leia, Carrie Fischer, attempt to evade Imperial forces. They seek refuge in the seemingly safe Cloud City, only to find betrayal lurking within. When Luke abandons his training to confront Vader, he faces a chilling revelation that will shake the foundation of his destiny and alter the course of the rebellion forever.
Oh, the Stugatz of this particular podcast, it's Hoth.
Hoth.
Should have been Colt.
Hoth.
No. Okay. Thank you, though. Did you know? The shots where Luke uses his Jedi powers to retrieve his lightsaber from a distance were achieved by having Mark Hamill throw the lightsaber away and then running the film in reverse. Did you know? Mark Hamill had to bang his head 16 times on the ceiling of Yoda's hut before director Irvin Kershner was satisfied with the scene. Did you know? When shooting on location in Finse, Norway, a fierce snowstorm hit the hotel where the cast and crew were staying. This would have normally halted filming, but director Irvin Kershner thought these weather conditions were an excellent opportunity to film the scene where Luke wanders through the snow after escaping the Wampa Cave. He did this by sending Mark Hamill outside into the cold, while he and the cameraman stayed and filmed inside the hotel's front hall.
That's so mean.
I could just hear Hamill out there going, "Fuck you, fuck you."
That's hilarious. I didn't know that one.
Did you know? During the filming of the Battle of Hoth, the Echo Base troops were actually Norwegian mountain rescue skiers. In exchange for participation in this movie, Lucas made a donation to the Norwegian Red Cross. Did you know? George Lucas was so impressed by Frank Oz's performance as Yoda that he spent thousands of dollars on an advertising campaign to try and get him an Oscar nomination for Best Actor in a Supporting Role. Lucas's campaign ultimately failed because it was felt that a puppeteer wasn't an actor. Lucas felt this wasn't fair to Oz, who honestly didn't care. And finally, did you know? When Mark Hamill was having trouble with the Dagobah scenes with Yoda, Frank Oz brought in Miss Piggy and Kermit the Frog to make him laugh. And with that, we will take our first break, and we will be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, next week for our 262nd episode, we welcome back Adam Vanderwerf and film critic Adam Freed of MovieArcher.com to finish our trip through the original trilogy of Star Wars with Return of the Jedi from 1983, directed by Richard Marquand, starring Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, Billy D. Williams, Alec Guinness, and James Earl Jones. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Before we get too much further, let's check in with our guests. Rob, what are you working on and where can people find you?
Yeah, you can always find me on LinkedIn, of course. Look me up, Westport Rob, but Westport Studios is my main gig. We make B2B podcasts. These kind of podcasts, a little bit more fun and games. Ours a little bit more like learn some stuff, do your business better. But yeah, that's what we've been working on, and it's been kind of a busy season here, which is great. So I'm happy about that. Things are going well, and also there's a project I've been working on for about a year and a half, and it's actually documenting my fitness journey from 375 pounds downwards towards 270. I've actually put these all together and put together a 1 to 3 minute clip from every time after I work out. I've done this for like 200 different instances, and I'm going to be trying to figure out how to release this in a way that will help people, whether it's on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or whatever it might be. But that's one of those things I got up my sleeve that I haven't really told many people about. But it's real interesting. It's kind of funny to see the slimming down, especially in the facial region. I actually call the series Face Gains.
Nice. All right. And also, Andrew, what are you working on and where can people find you?
You can't find me anywhere on the internet. I don't exist out there, so don't go looking for me.
Lucky you.
You have a dormant Instagram account that never has any followers. You're not getting constant DMs.
That's right. I don't help anyone else with social media. You'll never interact with me on another page. Don't even think about that. No, you know where you can find me at this point. Rev Almanac on all the socials, every social, unfortunately. Oh, the summer I've got 1975 and 1976 back to back coming up in June and July. 76, then 75. Arguably two of the greatest Best Picture lineups of all time. We're going to be revising them, determining if Rocky was the best picture of 1976, if One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest was the best film of 1975. A couple other things really quickly. Number one, it just dropped today from recording. Obviously, this is going to come out a week after, but I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention our sort of mutual podcast friend, Adam St. John, over at 1001 by One. He just dropped the big announcement today. I've been fortunate to kind of help him a little bit behind the scenes, but he's got this huge independent movie film festival convention that he's hosting at a university in Michigan that he teaches at. It's going to be June 3rd through June 6th of 2026. Anyone and everyone is invited. So if you're listening to this, if you're watching this right now and you have any interest in this convention, email Adam at 1001by1@gmail.com. I'll be up there. I'm 99% sure Tom and Dana are going to do their best to make their way up to Michigan. It's going to be a lot of fun getting a lot of people together in the space. So hope to see you up there. Rob, we'd love to have you if you're available next June.
I love Michigan, man. It's a fabulous place to go.
We're going to be in the Upper Peninsula, so we're going to be
that's
way
the easy
up
part
there
to get to.
And then I also have to quickly mention, because we're talking about a movie from 1980 right now, I finally did it for our boy Kieran B. He gifted us all the way back in December Bronco Billy to watch, which is a 1980 film, and I watched it for Kieran.
It was in theaters at the same time as Empire.
I know, and that's why I had been holding off on it, and I thought, there's no better time than now while I'm watching Empire to see what else was happening in the world at that time. I used to consider Kieran a friend. I thought he considered me a friend. Usually gift a friend something great, like Bull Durham if they're into baseball or something like that. And then he drops Bronco Billy, knowing that I'm not the largest Clint Eastwood fan on the earth. I think Clint Eastwood's fine. He's made some good movies. He should probably stick to dramatic films and not comedies for the few years he has left in his life, because Clint Eastwood and comedy do not go hand in hand. 2.5 stars out of 5 on Letterboxd is my review for Bronco Billy. Somehow still higher than Tom's 2 stars.
Yeah, that's generous.
I thought it was pretty average. It was a passable way to spend a couple of hours. I'll never watch it again. Thanks, Kieran.
I didn't even see that in the theaters, and I saw almost everything that went through at that time because there wasn't much else to do when you're in high school and living in Beloit, Wisconsin.
It's definitely a flawed film, but I did enjoy parts of it. Like, am I going to probably watch it again? No, not likely. But does it have at least some entertainment value? Yeah, I suppose. It's not the worst thing I've watched for somebody else.
There was a scene in a hotel room with Clint Eastwood and a female character that I thought, this sure doesn't fly very well, even in 1980. It's certainly not flying well in 2025. But now I know the bar has been set for what I'm going to be gifting Kieran in the future. So be prepared, my friend.
I think the worst thing that I've watched for somebody else in the podcasting space, it's probably in, forgive me because I don't remember every movie that I watched for prep last year when I was on 5 times for your show. But I want to say the one I was most aggressively angry at was it Match Point? Is the Woody Allen film from 2005? Oh man, did I hate that one. There were no redeeming characters at all. Well, I can't say that. There was like 2 redeeming characters, but they were kind of the ones being fucked over in the movie.
That's the one with ScarJo, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, where he's like the tennis coach and then he's getting with the yeah. We don't need to go into it. It's definitely a total Woody Allen film, and I never want to come close to watching that again.
That's your gift next year, Kieran.
No, he just watched it recently.
God.
And he said he liked it.
Okay.
When doing the show prep for the 1982 episode for you, Andrew, I remembered Personal Best. And I said I was going to rave about this film to make you watch it and then have you just going, what in the hell were you talking about? And it was going to be this huge joke, but then Tom lets it out and goes, well, it's a joke. Well, that movie was a piece of shit.
I don't want to tip my hand too much to 1982 because we'll all be reconvening in a few months for that. But at this point, I think I'm like 22 movies into prep for that year. And Dana, Personal Best is at the very, very bottom currently.
It should, well, it should be.
And we will be dedicating multiple minutes, a whole segment potentially, to unpacking what in the hell GARP is. The World According to GARP.
It's called John Updike. And every book he wrote was like that.
Oh, God. It is one of the strangest plot lines in what it theoretically is like a fairly mainstream movie. Okay. Well,
it goes off the rails quick.
Yeah. We'll record this in a couple of months. We'll come back to it. But yeah.
Yeah.
We're definitely going to talk about GARP. All right. That out of the way, we left off at best performance. Dad, who did you have down?
I have Mark Hamill.
Interesting. I'm not sure anybody would have gone that direction.
I did because I thought he had the most range of emotions that he had to go through from, having to deal with Yoda and his internal conflict and then fighting Vader.
So he won the physical therapy award?
Yeah, that's about right. I mean, half the film was Harrison Ford being snarky and being Harrison Ford. Carrie Fisher, most of the time, she's either being sassy or annoying. And I didn't really see anybody else that was that brilliant in performance.
Okay, well, I'll go with mine. I have James Earl Jones as the voice of Darth Vader.
Well, I'll get to him.
For everything that you had in the original Star Wars and how well he performed, he's kind of the prominent lead in this one for the most part. I mean, you could theoretically make a case for Hamill, Harrison Ford, or James Earl Jones being the standout performer in this movie. I would also argue, I know as much as people appreciate John Williams' score from the original, I actually think the score from this one far exceeds the original Star Wars. I think it has much better transitional work in between different scenes. When you're changing planets, it has different tones and different things going on. But for stepping out into the limelight and making Vader a much bigger, more menacing character and his line delivery. He just creates so much with simply just the voice of Vader. And I said it last week, if there were ever an acting nomination for voice work, it's this.
Yeah, I think I'm going to jump right on that with you, Tom. And I think it's a combination of James Earl Jones's, unbelievable characterization of this very evil man, but also David Prowse's carrying of this 6'7" or so dude that is just a head and shoulders taller than everybody. He's powerful. And going back to your thoughts on the musical score, I mean, this is the movie where we get the Imperial March. This is where the true, most probably influential villainous piece of music in cinema is born. And I think the combination of Jones and Prowse as Darth Vader completes kind of the trifecta of he sounds the part, he looks the part, and he has the kind of the backup drip, if you will, not just clothing, but also the soundtrack to make him steal the show.
If you were to walk up to 100 people on the street randomly and just ask them about The Empire Strikes Back, everybody's going to talk about the ending and the very famous plot twist. But that doesn't work if leading up to it, you don't have the conflicting duality of the character. The only reason the reveal as him being the father works is because he has to be this supernatural evil that you think is so devoid of humanity at this part. He's more machine. I know that's from Jedi, not from Empire, but he's more machine than man. And he's lost all of his ability to care about individuals. He is menacing, he is threatening, and to find out that he is your father, that he is what you could become if you turn to the dark side, as opposed to your surrogate father, Ben Kenobi from the last one. I think that's why that twist is so impactful for people. And even though that twist has been revealed to the world, it is the worst kept movie secret at this point. People who have never seen the movies know that twist. It's still impactful.
I am your caveat.
Yeah.
I'm going to go a little off the board from the three of you gentlemen. All great choices, but I'm going to go Lawrence Kasdan, best performer, because as great as Star Wars 1977 is, it can come off a little hokey in spots. It's a little camp, intentionally, really. But I think what Lawrence Kasdan does, and I know he's not the only person who had a hand in the screenplay of this film, but he's ultimately the final person who he did the final draft of the screenplay. And I just think that what we learn from the prequels is that George Lucas is a brilliant, creative mind. He's a brilliant producer. He sucks ass at writing a screenplay. He is dreadful. They even called Lawrence Kasdan back in for the new sort of sequel trilogy with Force Awakens. Like they knew what they had in Lawrence Kasdan.
Well, he's clearly lost his touch then. Good Lord.
He was only...
What do you really think, Rob?
He was only implemented briefly, but I mean, he adds a maturity to this film that Star Wars A New Hope did not have. And if you think about Lawrence Kasdan, this is his first screenwriting credit. He immediately goes on to do Raiders of the Lost Ark, Body Heat in 1981 that he writes and directs, and then he does The Big Chill in 83. Like from like a start of a screenwriting career, that's one hell of a first 4 movies that he puts out there. And this kind of like sets him in the Hall of Fame of screenwriters for me.
I would agree with that. It's always difficult when you have multiple screenwriters credited to figure out exactly who is responsible for what. But I would agree that given how closely he works and what his eventual career goes on to become in a very short order, he's probably the one, if you're going to put a finger on it from the writing, which I think is impressive in this movie, that you would really go behind. All right, best secondary performances. Rob, let's start with you.
Really have to go with Billy D. Williams. I think that he is a character who's introduced late in the game, and I think the amount of love you can have for Lando is immediately apparent. He's in the last 30 minutes of this movie, and you don't know much about him. You don't, so Billy D. Williams has to create this character who is, Han's best friend. And you just meet him for a very little bit. He's in this situation where he's trapped, and he has to come across as a very friendly, very charming, very disarming kind of person. Because honestly, if you look at it, yes, there are hints in there. You see the stormtroopers and they blow up C-3PO and things like that. And there's the little hints that Cloud City is compromised, but Lando is trying to sell the shit out of this. And the other thing that I think that is really important is that Lando also is in a cast of entirely white people. Before this, Lando is the first spot of diversity that we see, and he crushes it because of who Billy D. Williams is as an actor, not because he's black, but because a great actor comes from anywhere. And I think that that's what Billy D. Williams really illustrates in this, and really shows us that we can find somebody late in the game. And eventually he has a bigger role in Return of the Jedi, which is great. But I think his short time and putting him as the administrator of Cloud City also was incredibly progressive for the time.
It cannot be understated how significant it was to put him in a lead role or a significant supporting role in this movie, and the representation that it employed at the time. Because at the late 70s, you were not getting prominent actors in fairly mainstream blockbuster movies that were a significant character. If anything, they were the equivalent of, is it the red shirts from Star Trek that always died?
Mm-hmm.
They're basically the banta fodder. And instead, this guy becomes kind of a hero, especially by the end of Jedi, that kids can look to and see some form of representation. And I think if you're looking at important, heroic cinema figures that are diversal plays, this is probably number one, right before Black Panther, if you ask me. So my best secondary is Yoda and Frank Oz. If you have not seen George Lucas's recent comments, I think it was at the TCM Film Festival, as to why Yoda talks the way that he does, and I will probably butcher this, but apparently he wanted to create, because people don't pay attention if you're delivering dense philosophical lines as much unless the character has like some sort of weird tick or an accent or something that makes you pay attention. So he made Yoda talk kind of out of sequence in order to get people to pay attention and not have like glass eyes when they were in the middle of watching the film. But what he does to create a comedic ray of light in the middle of the film, and I also will implore both of my guests this evening to basically give all the Yoda lines to my dad, who actually does a fairly good Yoda impression, is just so great. But he also delivers these emotionally powerful moments. When he pulls the X-Wing out of the swamp, you could easily say it's one of the best moments in the film. I think for some people, it is the emotional crux of the movie. And when they started to actually believe in the Force themselves. I think as the audience avatar in Luke, while you've seen the Force in action at times, that's a significant moment in letting us develop our appreciation and belief in the Force overall. And so I really appreciate this character who really expands the universe, lets us know a little bit beyond kind of the very minimal pieces that are stripped back from the original Star Wars as to what the Force is and what it's capable of doing, to give us a much wider look at this, while presenting it in a package that is accessible for most people and kids, most specifically.
I'm going to jump in before Dana, because I'm just going to piggyback off of Tom. As much as my honorable mention, I wanted to give it to the Millennium Falcon, because like it's a character in and of itself.
Yeah, ship's a character, totally.
Yeah, and there was like, you got some interest in what the ship was in A New Hope, and then in this movie you expand upon it with Lando, and you find out there's a little more backstory to the ship. So like the ship is integral as a character, which I think is really fascinating. But for me, it's obviously Frank Oz as the Yoda character. He's charming. He's goofy, he's mysterious, he's scary at times. Like that character inhabits a lot of different things. But what I've found most recently on the rewatches over the last week or so is I feel like Yoda with my children, and they are Luke, because they ask so many questions and they're so petulant and whiny and stubborn that sometimes I wish I could die like Yoda does because he can't take another question from Luke. I'm joking, of course, but I mean, he would rather fade off into the next life than listen to another goddamn question from Luke, because he's been dealing with Jedi for 800 years and he has no more patience. And I felt like Yoda.
Between you and Dana, you guys are giving such a black mark to fatherhood.
Well, I used to go through that when my wife would go out of town and I'd have all three and everything was dad, 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 dad. And I finally would get to the point and say, what was the name I came up with? Harold. I said, I am not answering to dad anymore. You have to call me Harold. Otherwise, I'm not answering. And it would just rub them this. And then they'd get on the phone with mom. How are things going? Dad's making us call him Harold again.
I also want to say that what they do with Yoda in the prequels is an abomination, turning him into a CGI character. Like the puppetry is so integral to that character and bringing life to it with a realistic aspect that, especially in Attack of the Clones, when he starts lightsaber fighting with Dooku.
You mean the psychotic frog moment?
It takes me out of that movie more than anything else, because I don't buy Yoda being that. It drives me bonkers what happens in that movie with his lightsaber skills.
I don't know. I always loved it as a kid.
Yeah, when you're 9.
Yeah. Again, I told you at the beginning, what I loved most was the lightsaber duels, and to have Yoda flipping around like that was awesome.
Yeah, that's why when you were, what was it, about 8 or 9, we took you to see Richard III with the sword fights, and you just absolutely were enthralled.
That's true.
Man, I thought you were cruel parents for a second there, Dana. Like, damn.
You will sit and watch Richard III, damn it.
Well, I went through and gave him the G-rated Cliff Notes version of this thing so he could follow along, but I thought the action in it would be awesome, and he seemed to enjoy it.
I did. I don't remember a single thing about it, but
yeah.
Anyway, other best secondaries. I think, Dad, you have yours left?
I had Frank Oz.
Okay.
I kind of alluded to it earlier. So, yes. I think Frank Oz is an amazing talent.
Most charismatic, I have Harrison Ford. It's really hard not to have Harrison Ford as most charismatic for this movie. He's pulling such a significant role for this entire thing. If you didn't fall in love with him from the first movie, I think most people probably do by the end of this one. He kind of pulls off a magic trick where you think he's a rapscallion, you think you can maybe reform him a little bit. He just makes you fall in love with him.
I hate to fall in line with you on this, Tom, but I have to do it again. This is the point where Harrison Ford carries this movie and Return of the Jedi so hard, in my opinion, that when my wife watched this for the first time with me about 10 or 15 years ago, she never saw it as a child. She saw it as an adult. She got so incredibly bored in Empire Strikes Back that she said, get Luke off the screen. I want to see Han again. That's how much work Harrison Ford does in this movie. She goes, Luke's a whiny bitch. I don't care. Get him off the screen. Like, okay. And we literally fast forwarded through most of the rest of Dagobah.
I can see it.
Dana, I'll let you go.
All right. I have James Earl Jones. I mean, he turned this voice acting into a revival. I mean, it took his career to unbelievable heights. I mean, it got to the point where his voice, you could just hear it and you immediately know who it is, and it became bigger than anything. Cripe's sake, after Star Wars, he became the voice of CNN.
And more importantly, Mufasa.
Yeah. So he became huge. I'm very happy that I got to see him perform live on stage in New York in a revival of a Gore Vidal play with John Larroquette, John Stamos, Cynthia Nixon, and
that's a star-studded cast. Wow.
Sybil Shepherd. I know it drives Tom nuts when I name drop.
Because you do it like every fucking episode.
Mm-hmm. And as long as you continue to be annoyed, I'll continue to do it.
I think that's my greatest contribution to this show, is just being annoyed with you.
Yeah, it might be.
I'll fall in line with Tom and Rob on this with Harrison Ford. I mean, let's talk for a second about Ford and he goes from being a carpenter to being the biggest movie star on earth for maybe 20 years. So I was looking at this run from 77 to 97. If you just like section off that 20 years, he does 3 Star Wars movies, he does 3 Indiana Jones movies, he does Blade Runner, Witness, Working Girl, Presumed Innocent, The Fugitive, Air Force One. Like he's just hitting home runs for like 20 years.
He was also Jack Ryan.
Yeah, that's
yes.
right.
I mean, I didn't even like pull it all, but like
Patriot
he was in the remake of Sabrina, which I actually think is a pretty good remake, to be honest with you. He's in the Mosquito Coast, Frantic. Like he's he many great movies.
2 minutes in Apocalypse Now.
Exactly. Yeah. So I would say to go from where he was to becoming the biggest star in Hollywood for 2 decades, probably, or give or take, is unbelievable. Like his charisma is off the charts.
Well, and even to this day, the son of a bitch is on television selling me a Jeep and saying, I like this Jeep, even though my last name is Ford.
Yeah. And he's pulling all-time American Treasure vibes in Shrinking. So we'll just forget that he was Red Hulk.
Yeah, and I love that he's like embracing this sort of curmudgeonly personality. Like he's obviously a curmudgeon in real life, but he's playing it up quite a bit for the cameras now, and I just think he's really having fun doing press and all this. Like, I don't know if you've seen, Dana, I think you watched the Conan O'Brien podcast. Harrison Ford was an amazing guest on the Coco podcast, and just fully in his zone of just being this like real asshole with an edge. It's great.
What was it? He was on a recent show, and I saw the comment was, it was revealed to him that Tim Burton originally considered him for Batman in '89. Said, oh, damn, I could have had a career.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like the definition of a Harrison Ford line. Anyway, moving on to best scene then. I have 5, and I'm sure somebody will give me another one, but I have Hoth battle. I have Vader force choke, which you could expand out to the multiple scenes where he does it, but we'll just go with the first one. Then I have Yoda shows up Luke, which is specifically ending in him pulling out the X-Wing. I have Han Solo is frozen, and then I have Luke confronting Vader. What did I miss?
The asteroid scene, right? Or am I thinking Return of the Jedi?
No, you're right.
No, I'm right. Okay.
No.
For a moment, I was like, oh my God, no, that's not in Return of the Jedi. Holy crap. Okay, thank God.
You know, the tough thing with this movie when you're talking about scenes is the way it's edited and cut. It's hard to kind of isolate like a one scene because the way it's sort of fragmented. Like you get scenes interspliced over multiple layers, you know? So it's like, it's hard to extract one like 10-minute sequence or whatever because it just kind of bounces around a lot. So I can't really say I can expand upon this too much because it's just moving really fast, and you're going to Dagobah like 3 or 4 times over the course of 20 minutes or whatever. So it's hard to like isolate a scene.
Right. I think you've got a point there too, where like Tom, you mentioned the whole like Han gets frozen scene. Is dinner part of that?
You mean where they first open the door and Vader's
the setup,
standing there?
with Boba Fett and everybody. Yeah.
That is so. I mean, there's a whole layer or a whole piece in between that where Han gets tortured for no reason. Then they find 3PO, and so no, I really would have those almost 2 separate moments.
And that's
Fair
the thing.
enough.
This movie has a lot of moments. It doesn't necessarily have a lot of extended scenes.
Right.
I mean, you could have the Han and Leia bridge moment where he kind of like first allows her to feel vulnerable around him, or that she's finally willing to concede and make out with him. But other than that, I mean, I would agree. It's jumping all over the place so often. It's hard to have anything that doesn't have 2 or 3 things in between to include. That's why when I kind of include the force choke, it's with a parenthetical S, because you have 3 different ones over the course of this, and I think they all have continuing meaning, but at the same time, they're all like 20 to 30 minutes apart.
Yeah, once you get off Hoth, it fragments intentionally,
Yes.
obviously, because
Right.
you're following multiple storylines. But really, it's the only period where it follows just one single point, is that opening 20-ish minutes on Hoth or whatever it is.
I would also argue that it kind of comes back together once everybody's on Bespin, but that's natural because they separate out in the middle and then they come back together. So by the time you get to Lando helping them escape and Luke, even though I guess you could say it's cutting back and forward between Luke and them trying to escape, it still feels like they're at least on the same world and that they don't have to do it back and forth as much. Because even on Hoth, once you get to the battle portion of things, you're cutting back and forth between Han and Leia trying to escape and then the guy in the AT-AT trying to shoot at the whatever it is, the shield generator. God, I would have been unmercifully crucified had I not gotten that. Anyway, and then Mark Hamill in his speeder and attacking the AT-ATs. I don't know. It does a great job of weaving, which is not an easy thing to do, but unless somebody has anything, I think we'll just stick with these 6.
That's fine with me.
Really, Dad? I'm shocked.
Yes.
Out of these, what is the best scene? We have Hoth battle, asteroid field, Vader force choke, Yoda shows up Luke, Han Solo is frozen, Luke confronts Vader.
I mean, it's Luke confronts Vader, right?
I have Han Solo as frozen. I think that's a much bigger emotional core in that section of the movie, because not only is he going to die, which even though you know he doesn't, there's still that like tiny bit, this time he will die when you watch this movie. Knowing that Mark Hamill might be next. And so it has multiple layers on top of that. You don't know what's going to happen to Leia and Chewie. You have the I love you confession. I mean, there's so much wrapped into that emotional peak right there before you get to the final climax with Luke. And to be fair, even though we're supposed to follow Luke as the primary hero in this one, I think most people are much more invested in Han and Leia and Chewie than they are with Luke.
I would slightly disagree with that. I do feel like during the Dagobah sequence, Luke is immature and whiny and in still that mode. But I think once he shows up and he actually confronts Vader, you actually see him mature kind of in real time. And what always throws me about this movie is the lightsaber battle in A New Hope is so rudimentary and stilted, and it's not great. Like, let's be honest, it's not the best looking choreography. The lightsaber battle in this movie is really well choreographed from a 3-year jump from A New Hope. And also the cinematography, the way it's shot, it's effectively a dark background. There's smoke billowing, the lightsabers. You're seeing Luke learning from his training, the way he's sort of surprising Vader. Vader's not. There's just so much that happens in the battle there beyond just what they're actually doing fighting. There's the whole psychology of what's going on. Luke's trying to overcome a lot of fear. To me, there's just so many layers to the confrontation that this is the point where Star Wars becomes something bigger to me.
I mean, again, if the movie's about anything, it's how do you turn to the good as opposed to the dark, and will the son commit the same sins as the father? I mean, that's really what it comes down to. So that if that's the plot crux of the movie, you'd be correct that it's the most pivotal scene. But I'm talking more on a emotional level, the investment. I'm not sure everybody has that, especially if you didn't see it in theaters in like 1980 for that reveal. I don't know if it has quite the same emotional impact that you had in that moment.
One of the things that dawned on me is when this film was going and the generation that was there, these are all baby boomers. And the baby boomers, their fathers, they had this whole thing of being removed where their fathers were there but distant. And so the connection that you used to have in the agrarian society where you worked alongside of your father and you learned things from your father as you grew up was no longer there as we morphed into a more urban culture and men were required to work and to be gone and mothers did all the raising. I think this almost speaks to that group, which is Luke did not have the benefit of having that connection with his father, and he tried to have that. And I think that part of it speaks to that generation where they feel disconnected from their fathers. They want to learn from their fathers. They want to live or love their fathers, but they don't understand their fathers or where their fathers were coming from or how they got to be there. And so I think that this has broader meaning to many people of that generation going through that era of 1977, 80 than what we can understand now.
So now that Dana has completely summarized the entire plot of Mad Men and related it to those watching Star Wars, what was your best scene, Dad?
I'm the old guy. Of course, it's Yoda showing up Luke.
Okay.
I mean, when else can an old guy get to be philosophical and make the young guy look idiotic?
When you get to be 900 years old.
Look this good, you will not.
So that's also my favorite scene. Let's just put it that way.
I am a sucker for a snow battle. And all of the magic that Industrial Light and Magic worked on that scene, man. I mean, it's like nothing you've ever seen before. Yes, you had the Death Star. Yes, you had the trench run and the X-Wings and everything like that. But this was something just completely different to be like, are those giant machines? No, you know they're models, but at the same time to look at that and go, looks pretty dang real. And even almost 50 years later, why I'm always a huge fan of practical effects, because they age really well.
Yeah, this movie looks significantly better than the original Star Wars. I mean, that was revolutionary at its time, but this feels like it's almost 10 to 15 years ahead of where Star Wars was when it was made. I'm shocked at how well this holds up and doesn't feel nearly as dated as the 1970s look of the OG Star Wars. I also want to say, for having the wherewithal to say that we all have the same scene, Andrew, all of us selected different scenes by the end of this, but all right. So anyway, moving on. Favorite scenes, Dad already said his was Yoda shows up Luke. I'll say mine is Luke confronts Vader. That goes to a deeper childhood lightsaber duel battle thing for me. But yes, I still think that if you're asking me to pick any part in this movie where I really want to watch it, it's that.
If I have to pick a favorite scene that just makes me like laugh like a child still, I love Yoda as a backpack. It's so minor, but just the idea that he's just like riding Luke and just he's creepy back there, just whispering in his ear. It's so silly. I love it. It just makes me laugh so much.
Again, I have to double up on this with the snow battle. Like, just there's so much to that, and if you look into the wider mythos of Star Wars and things like that, and just knowing about things like Rogue Squadron and everything like that, that these extra universal things that have woven in between that it's been a couple of years since the Rebel Alliance has done things. They've been hiding. Luke is not just this farm kid who knows how to drive his intergalactic pickup truck and gets put into an airplane. Basically, he's an accomplished pilot. He is flying with accomplished pilots and people who are actually good soldiers, if you will. And I think that that's really an interesting, once you learn outside of like what's going on with Hoth and how critical it is for the Rebel Alliance to actually get out of there. I also think it's another wonderful universe building thing. How many of us knew what the fucking ion cannon did until you saw it smash the shit out of a Star Destroyer and go like, woo, we're big old ships rolling over and little potato bug transports going right on by.
Well, and as big as the Star Destroyers were at that moment in time, to see Vader's master ship that's like 50 times larger.
The Executor, yes.
So, yeah. Now, I will go out on a limb here, and it may bite me in the ass like it did Andrew a moment ago, but most indelible moment, I am your father.
For sure.
Okay, 4 for 4? All right.
4 for 4.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to have too much of a complaint with that one. I think there are individualized most indelible moments, but if you're talking just the umbrella for everybody generally, it's the number one thing that people talk about from this movie.
Now, Tom, I don't think you have this in remaining questions, but I'm just going to throw this out there because we're all in agreement, and I figured we would be. Is this the single greatest plot reveal in cinematic history? It's got to be, right?
I think this is the thing that creates the plot twist. So yeah, I would probably have this as number 1. I'm trying to think what would be number 2.
The Crying Game.
Oh, I don't know. The end of 7.
That was pretty big. If you didn't know it, if you weren't aware of it ahead of time, wow.
Okay.
He's not wrong.
I mean, there were a couple of them that we're going to discuss later this year. We have both 7 and The Usual Suspects coming up. So, I mean, those are two very famous reveals. But yeah, this has got to be the number 1 plot twist.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. That looks like a good spot for our second break. We will be right back. Before we jump back into the episode, and before we get to the Stanley Rubric in a minute, if you're ever curious about our master greatest movies of all time list that has every graded movie we've ever discussed on the show, there's a link in the episode description of every episode of this show, or you could go to RonnieDuncanStudios.com and find it as the top entry on the greatest movie of all time podcast show page. That is the grades we've done so far for all 236 movies we've graded, and we continue to add more each week. Make sure to check that out as we go and follow along. Dad, do we have anyone to remember this week?
Fortunately, no.
All right, we can move on. So we don't have the awkward transition this week to best funniest lines. We'll just move right into it. I will start us off here. Vader, if only you knew the power of the dark side. Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father. He told me enough. He told me you killed him. No, I am your father.
All right, well, I'm going to jump in because I use this line with my wife 3 to 4 times a week. It's just part of our dialogue. Leia, I love you. Han Solo, I know.
I'll piggyback off of that with one I use with my wife during the winter. When it's real cold and snowy here, obviously on the shore of Lake Michigan. You know, I snowblow most of my neighborhood, and I walk outside, and usually it's still pretty bad weather out there, and she's like, you're going to be cold, and I go right into that line of where the Echo Base officers tell Han Solo as he's leaving to go search for Luke, Han, your tauntaun will freeze before you reach the first marker. And then Han yells back, then I'll see you in hell. So I tell my wife sometimes, I'll see you in hell as I go out to snowblow.
Ready are you? What you know of ready? For 800 years I have trained Jedi. My own counsel will I keep on who's to be trained. A Jedi must have the deepest commitment, the most serious mind. The one a long time I watched all his life as he walked or looked away to the future, to the horizon. Never his mind on what he was. What he was doing. Adventure. Excitement. Our Jedi craves not these things. You are ready. You are reckless.
That reel is going to be so good and hit so hard on social media.
It is,
Yeah.
except that his Yoda crossed with some Peter Lorre there for a few sentences.
Okay, it's hard to do that
I know
long
it.
of a thing.
I don't know why you tried to sustain it that entire time. Oh, anyway. All right. Moving on. C-3PO. Sir, the possibility of successfully navigating an asteroid field is approximately 3,720 to 1. Never tell me the odds.
Piggybacking off of that later in the when they're going up against the Star Destroyer, sir, the odds of successfully attacking an Imperial Star Destroyer are, and Leia and Han, shut up.
One of my favorite lines early on in the film, when Han Solo's on Hoth looking for Luke, eventually finds him, and he cuts open the tauntaun and he says, and I thought they smelled bad on the outside.
All right, the continuing episodes of Yoda.
Somebody else want to go?
I've got one, and this one
Go
I want to
ahead.
revisit this in the questions asked at the end segment. Lord Vader has just learned of Admiral Ozzel's blunder and activates a view screen, bringing him and Captain Piet on the screen. Admiral Ozzel, Lord Vader, the fleet has moved out of lightspeed and preparing to... Ozzel stops, suddenly beginning to choke, clutching his throat. You have failed me for the last time. Admiral. Captain Piet? Yes, my lord. Make ready to land our troops beyond the energy field and deploy the fleet so nothing gets off the system. Beside Piet, Admiral Ozzel utters one last strangled gasp and falls over dead. You are in command now, Admiral Piet. Admiral Piet. Thank you, Lord Vader.
Leia, why you stuck up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder? Who's scruffy-looking?
I only have Yodas left, and I gotta let Dana have all of them.
Okay.
Just take some of the small ones.
Yes.
No, his is too good. He's got gotta get the small ones in.
Yoda.
Why you wish become Jedi?
Luke. Well, mostly because of my father, I guess. Yoda.
Ah, father. Powerful Jedi was he? Powerful Jedi.
Come on. How can you know my father? You don't even know who I am. Oh, I don't even know what I'm doing here. We're wasting our time. Yoda, looking away from Luke.
I cannot teach him. The boy has no patience.
Obi-Wan. He will learn patience. Yoda.
Much anger in him, like his father.
Was I any different when you taught me?
All right. Darth Vader, Luke, you can destroy the Emperor. He has foreseen this. It is your destiny. Join me, and together we can rule the galaxy as father and son. Come with me. It is the only way.
Okay. Yoda.
Control. Control. You must learn control.
Darth Vader, impressive. Most impressive. Obi-Wan has taught you well. You have controlled your fear. Now release your anger. Only your hatred can destroy me.
Han Solo, after being tortured extensively. I feel terrible.
I'm out.
What? You missed the best. You missed the
Yeah.
best Yoda line.
Which
a couple
one?
of good ones.
Which one?
No. Try not. Do or do not. There is no try.
There's that one, and then there's the other one that I love, which is Luke says to him, I won't fail you. I'm not afraid. You will be.
You will.
Well, I did have that one down, and why did I not find
I
that
don't
on the
I don't
list?
believe it. That is why you fail. I can't, it's too big. Size matters not. Look at me. Judge me by my size, do you? And well, you should not, for my ally is the Force, and a powerful ally it is. Life creates it, makes it grow. Its energy surrounds us and binds us. Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter. You must feel the Force around you, here, between you, me, the tree, the rock, everywhere, yes, even between the land and the ship. Or how about, Luke, is the dark side stronger? No, quicker, easier, more seductive. But how am I to know the good side from the bad? You will know. When you are calm, at peace, passive, a Jedi uses the Force for knowledge and defense, never for attack. So, okay. Anybody else have anything?
Well, honorable mention for this one. As Luke is getting into his snowspeeder and meets his co-pilot, Dak, I feel like I could take on the whole Empire myself. I know what you mean, says Luke. Pour one out for Dak. He gets stepped on by an AT-AT.
Also, quick shout out to Jesse from the previous week's episode for doing the R2-D2. Very nicely done.
Boop, boop, beep, boop, 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 beep. All right. I guess the only place left to go is the Stanley Rubric. Let's grade this one out. Legacy is up first. Legacy is a measure of the legacy of the film approximately 5 years after it came out. So this is the 45th anniversary. For the last 40 years, what is the legacy of this film as shared between the industry and the audience? We split this category 5 and 5 points for a total of 10 between those two groups. Dad, would you like to go first or second?
I'll go first because I'm always the one who tries to make things abbreviated and take the shortcut. Who here does not have 5 and 5? Anybody? Okay, so legacy is industry is 5 and public is 5, and we have it all the way around. Because to do anything else is like idiotic and a waste of time because you'd lose the argument.
It's one of the few blockbusters that I think, ironically, you could say shared across the entire industry. This expands the universe and creates so much more content and other things for the universe to expand into, and basically creates the Star Wars culture of now. So yes, it is a full, verified, undeniable 10.
this has had more impact on the world than George Bush, the first George Bush did
Either
as
one.
president.
Well, the second one, billions of dollars spent, a lot
Lots
of people dead.
Yeah, I know. So I didn't use him, but I mean, this ranks up there with, things like the internet as far as cultural impact.
I don't know about that. I mean, the internet is pretty close to like fire in the wheel. Like there are some cultural fads I
Okay.
would put closer to this, but sure, I'll accept the point. Regardless, yeah, let's move this ball forward. 10s all around. Let's not spend time on it. Okay, so first category we have locked in. Now, impact and significance. This is a measure of the impact and significance at the time the film came out and within the initial 5 years of its release, so roughly 1980 to 1985. What is the impact and significance as felt between the audience and the industry at the time? We split this category as well between 5 and 5 points for a total of 10. I feel like Andrew is ready for a fight on this category if possible, and so I will let him lead.
I don't know if I'd fight anybody. This isn't Fight
Oh,
Club
you
after all.
will be. You will be.
I would say from an audience standpoint, it's a clear 5 because it's the highest grossing film of that year. You don't really need to say anything else, quite honestly. On the industry side, I can't give it the full 5 because there were some mixed feelings about it. Some of the critics just couldn't fully grasp the idea of it ending on the downer. And so I'm going to give it a 4.5. So I'm at a 9.5. But it still had a huge impact on the industry, even in the short term. It just wasn't unanimous praise top to bottom.
All right, Dad, I'll let you give the contrarian voice here.
Well, if you were to say it within the first year or 2 years for the industry, I would agree with you, Andrew. But by 5 years, anybody who criticized this movie tried to find the copies of their script or their print or their article and burn them because they were in the dust. So within the 5 years, it's a 5, and the public a 5. I lived through this period in time. This stuff was, it was bigger than about anything you can think of. And I really think it really credited bringing back Star Trek because they were looking at it this way, because within that first few years, they brought Star Trek back from the TV show into the movie theater to catch lightning again in a bottle. And so I'm a 10.
I did not have that on my bingo card when we started this.
No, nor did I. I really thought Daniel was going to beat the shit out of this.
I'll be honest, I was trying to maybe split the difference between where I thought my dad would go and where maybe Andrew would go. And so I may have started off too low on this, thinking that at an industry level, it wasn't as well received, but it's really hard to ignore the franchise potential, the sequel, it being the biggest movie in its particular year, even though there's a significant drop off, in my opinion, from the amount of money that it made relative to the original. Like, I don't think there were as many people seeing this movie as were seeing it multiple times over for the original, because that was just so new. It was a lighter experience. It wasn't nearly the nerd fandom that I think really appreciated this one. That stood on its own and was much more appreciated. So I can see the argument for a 9.5. I think it's going to be hard to say it's not a 5 for the industry, even though the critical reviews at the time were a little bit mixed, didn't really get a lot of awards attention. But due to the other surrounding marketing and franchising material and everything else that was going on, it's going to be really hard to deny that. Fuck it. Go with a 10.
Interesting, because I'm gonna dock it just a half a point, because I really think that you made a great point there, Tom, of Star Wars 1977, Episode 4, New Hope, is a fully contained story. It starts, it ends, you blow up the Death Star, everybody goes home happy, and we get a medal. And for those of you who are Robot Chicken fans, mine just says participant. But that movie is a complete hero's journey, start to finish. And I don't know if the public / industry, and I'm going to kind of shave a quarter point from each one here. I don't think either of them were ready to understand that this is a sequel, but also something that is putting out like docking bays, if you will, for future expansions to the universe, whether it is Return of the Jedi, whether it is the prequels, whether it is the sequel trilogy, whether it is the Old Republic era, whether it is all of these things that expanded the universe of Star Wars. I think it was great, but I don't think people saw it in 1980.
All right, we'll leave it at that. And that is a 9.75 average between the four of us. Respectable, but not quite at the heights of the original Star Wars or Jaws, which I think is fair. Novelty. This is a measure of the originality of anything having to do with the movie, as well as the execution on the movie as a whole. We split this category as well, 5 and 5 points for a total of 10. So there's somebody that feels they're itching to lead on this category.
Ooh.
All right, I'll let Andrew go.
I shall yield, sir.
He has an
I shall
itch.
yield.
Needs to be scratched.
So let's just go back a week in time and talk about Star Wars 1977, which that one got an 8.5 on novelty. So I'm going to kind of use an 8.5 as the benchmark for novelty. Now, I think we can all agree that as novel as the original Star Wars was, it was borrowing a lot from Westerns, Kurosawa films, Buck Rogers. There's a lot of things that George Lucas was pulling for. So I can understand why the novelty would be docked a touch. The 8.5 makes sense. I'm here to say the novelty factor on Empire is higher. And it's because this movie did something with the downer note that movies weren't. It wasn't predictable in that way. It was breaking new ground cinematically. It was pushing the limits of what the Star Wars universe knows. We're talking Hoth, AT-ATs, Dagobah, Bespin, Boba Fett, Bacta-Tanks, Lando, Carbonite. There's all of these things that are novel ideas that have never existed in the universe of cinema. And George Lucas just throws them all in here and they work in this perfect cacophony. I think this is a total 10 for novelty. It is so original. It is so unique. It becomes the new blueprint for every trilogy that has been made since. We're literally just in the wake of the second Dune movie, which follows the exact same beats of a downer second. And you can quibble over, how much Lucas stole from Frank Herbert and vice versa. But I mean, that Dune movie is sort of reliant on the Star Wars trilogy and people being familiar with how the sequential order goes of a first film to a second film to a third film. So I think the novelty on this is unquestionably a 10.
Dana, you ignorant slut. Would you like the counterpoint here?
Sure. Kudos if anybody can tell me outside of us where reference that's made from. But anyway, first of all, the concept of the gunfighter not being adequately prepared to go against the villain and has to practice and get himself into shape to do it. I mean, the man who shot Liberty Valance. I mean, I can name about 30 films, specifically Westerns, where that's a central theme. The fact that they have to challenge and go in secretly to the back door to destroy something. But again, the originality, this is just so much borrowing from Westerns that I don't find this at all that original. So I'm giving the originality a 2 because I just don't see it. Now, execution.
Redeem yourself, sir.
I love watching how uncomfortable it is.
Just for a second, Dana, can we all agree that the plot reveal is something that we all agree the plot reveal is the greatest plot reveal in cinematic history?
Okay.
The originality of that alone should bump your score significantly higher than the fact that other movies had training sequences. I mean, that is the crux of the film. It should bump your novelty. Let's be serious here.
For anyone either watching the video or experiencing this in just the audio version and kind of having to imagine what Andrew's uncomfortability looks like, you should probably head over to the YouTube. But I also want to save the audience a little bit of shock. His 2 on originality is only half of the category, so it's 2 out of 5. So it's like a 40%. Let's not, because when he said 2, originally my mind goes to 2 out of 10, and I'm like, what the fuck are you smoking? But okay, just
Okay.
we'll calm down. We'll
Originality.
take a step
All right.
back. We'll let him finish.
I will give you a half a point on the reveal
Whole
being that.
point.
So I'll go with a 2.5. From an execution standpoint, it's an incomplete movie, which is what I said. It's a bridge movie. So I have a hard time because it left so much there that you just kind of had this emptiness. I remember walking out feeling like, oh my God, I got to wait all this time to find out what happens.
Wouldn't you say that's a novel concept for you at that time? Boom.
I guess if you want to equate novel with annoying. So
I feel like Andrew's having a seizure over there.
So I'm at a 6.5 for novelty. This is my hardest category and the one that I marked it down the lowest.
Wait, hold on. Your execution isn't even at a 5? You're at a 4? This is one of the best executed blockbuster movies of all time.
But it's incomplete. All right. I'll go with a 4.5 just because you guys are beating me up so bad. So I'll go with a 7.
Deservedly so, sir. Deservedly so.
Okay.
No,
All right.
Just for let's just say a listener hasn't followed along this trajectory. Dana, can you remind people what you personally gave the novelty of Star Wars 1977 so they can directly compare it to this?
I believe it was...
He doesn't write down his own score, so he's going to have a hard time.
So you find the original more novel than this, even though the original assuredly borrowed more in concept.
Repackaging in the way it was, yes, because it was so unique when it came in. This just continues on, so it loses that emphasis or being completely repackaged and completely unique in the system. So it loses that momentum.
Just be careful.
So I have to give it a little down from.
Be careful. He has a harder time the more you question his logic to actually explaining it.
That's the plan.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm trying to soften him up. But I will give him credit on this. Anytime we've done a sequel, he has rightly knocked the novelty down. But here's where I'm going to go.
Piss out of my sequels. I hate it.
This is where I'm going to go with this particular point. I think that this, more than any other sequel, was operating over a cliff without its skis. It is in a completely new territory where nobody had really made a direct sequel that wasn't based on a source material. You could say The Godfather had a sequel and made it possibly well. I think it's very arguable that The Godfather Part 2 is the most successful and significant sequel of all time. I'll accept that argument, but it's still based on the book and using the same director. This didn't have the same writers, even though the story arc overall was done by Lucas. Didn't have the same director. And the leaps and bounds it makes in score, to me, in acting and execution, in the way it looks, the way it's shot, the villainous effect, how much more Vader becomes front and center. And I think this is what really makes Vader possibly the greatest villain of all time in cinematic history. I think they were operating in a level that nobody had to this point and exploring so many different concepts and things beyond what it was originally capable of. Nobody had created a major blockbuster franchise sequel to this point where they had to expand the universe. And this is the first one to do it. And it's probably the best one to ever do so. I'm with Andrew. I have a 10. If for nothing else, the execution to me, this movie slaps so fucking hard that it's a 5 on execution. I might be willing to shade a little bit here or there on the novelty, but I just think you look at all of the surrounding criteria with it, I'm at a 10. I have not given a lot of 10s on novelty. I reserve it for very few. This one to me is a 10.
I think the thing that differentiates the three of us from Dana in this case is that Dana has a much larger purview of a cinematic history. And I think that I want to respect that here by actually shaving a half a point from my score here at a 9.5. I want to shave a half a point off of the actual novelty because Tom and Andrew, I do 100% agree with yes, this is something that we had never seen before. But Dana does make a point that there are elements, and yes, sometimes you can't like trademark elements and things like that, but like some of this has been done before. We had this conversation with Gladiator that it was the first like historical Romanish picture in 40 years. You know, Spartacus and Ben-Hur and things like that were the predecessors for that. And I think that that actually does diminish that, you know, that we've seen this element before. I'm thinking like when you watch like a cooking show, if my wife's been on a Chopped Ben for some reason, I don't like these 12 or 13-year-old episodes of Chopped. I don't know why, but watching these contestants and they put like shrimp in the first course. Well, then they put shrimp in the second course. And it's like, we've already seen shrimp in your meal, man. Like, knock it off. And I think that's one of those things where Dana may have seen shrimp in the meal already. And he's potentially, and Dana, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like, I think you're right in that the shrimp was in the appetizer. It doesn't need to be in the entree, and it certainly doesn't need to be in the dessert. But,
Ugh.
right?
Shrimp ice cream.
Might be awesome. You never know. Get it in the right hands of the right chef. Anyway.
Well, the most popular ice cream for the James Madison White House was oyster.
Oh.
I don't like oysters,
awful.
period. So
I enjoy oysters. Oyster ice cream sounds horrific. But to finish out my thoughts on this, the execution in line, Andrew, Tom, this is a movie that has literal walking mechanical elephants. It has giant space battles. You see Star Destroyers going sideways because they've been struck by something. You don't know how the hell ion weaponry works, but it does, and it really fucks up those spaceships. You then see the mama of all of them. It's 20 kilometers long. Holy crap, that is dialed to 11. And to make sure that people like understood how off the chain this entire thing was of like, hey, yeah, that's Darth Vader's flagship. It's, just, but like 12 miles long. It's, I think that execution of making a scope of a universe is really tremendous. And, Bespin was also a tremendous scene. It's a city. It's floating. It's in the top of a gas giant. It's a mining colony. There's so much even in that 2 or 3 sentences I just said there that blows out the universe so much. So like 5 out of 5 on that for a 9.5, sir.
Dana, really quickly, I have a question for you. Is this movie more or less novel than Raiders of the Lost Ark? Just like if you're just comparing the two of them, like which one to use? Like, because isn't Raiders borrowing a lot from past movies?
If you wanted to do this exercise, Andrew, I could already tell you that he has higher novelty on something like Young Frankenstein, which theoretically is a sequel to Blazing Saddles already, and is based off of a bunch of source material.
I'm just trying to pull a similar, like, we're talking Spielberg, we're talking Lucas, we're like, if you just had to put this movie and Raiders, they're coming out a year apart, which one's more novel to you, just on the face? Because again, Raiders is borrowing a lot too. The reason I'm asking this is you gave Raiders a 9. I'm trying to pick through your own
probably
scoring.
I would say Raiders was more novel simply because of how it was packaged. It took a serial from the 1940s and 50s and made it into a full-length feature and came up with a whole package within it. I think
The
9
defense
was
rests.
probably I think 9 was too high though. I probably would have said an 8 in retrospect now that I'm thinking about it.
If
But
you
I
wanted to take a challenge
Yeah.
and you want to cut up his novelty scores on everything, I think he gave a higher novelty score to Gladiator 2 weeks ago.
That's what it's like. I think it's important to remember I feel like
He discredits stuff for being sourced on it when he doesn't necessarily like the film or he's not as engaged as other things, and he's very subjective on this category. I've been on him for years about this in previous seasons. He's just who he is.
it's just worth noting for the listener who maybe doesn't follow all 200 and something episodes of Gmote.
That's why somebody will have to go through with a mashup of all of his novelty scores, because he did the same thing to The Godfather. I want to say he give it like a 7 for novelty because I kept saying, Dad, it's King Lear. Whatever. We'll just move on. But it's a 9.13 between the pair of us.
Weird numbers. I love weird numbers.
All right. Classicness. By the way, which is the Baja Blast category? I keep forgetting. Is it classicness? Is it
Hell yes.
rewatchability?
Or no, it's rewatchability. That's what it is.
Okay.
You have like a million different variations of rewatchable scores.
That's very true. And that one I will grant a certain level of subjectivity, of course, on. But all right. Lest we put him back in the hot seat immediately again, Dad, I will give you the option of whether you would like to lead Classicness. But before I do, Classicness is basically the hardest of our categories to completely define. It's mostly based on how well this movie has aged or not aged. How well does it hold up among many different things? And there's a lot of nuance potentially in this category, which is usually where Dad loves to live, which is why I let him lead. But since we just grilled him a lot for Novelty, do you want to take a break, or would you like to continue to revel in this moment?
No, I'm used to this. I mean, I spent a lot of time in federal court, so
Yeah,
having a judge, you guys
Not
are
as bad as federal
pikers.
court.
Yeah, you guys are pikers.
Yeah, we can't
I've been
find
ripped
you.
so many times that it doesn't matter. And as the old adage of, Lincoln arguing a case, the judge looks down and says, "Mr. Lincoln, didn't you argue the other side this morning?" He goes, "Well, yes, Judge, I did, but this morning I was wrong." Anyway, Classicness. Last week I gave Star Wars a 9 for Classicness. One of the criticisms I had was the fact that we only had one minority or no minorities, and that
Darth Vader is black.
Okay, sure. This one, we actually have an African-American character who's a main feature. And they made 5 foot, 110-pound Carrie Fischer into a action star. I don't remember any kind of woman action star in a film up until now. Now,
Ripley,
as far as
the
classicness.
year prior.
Huh?
Ripley, the year prior, that you gave a lot of points
Okay.
for on that episode going back to season
Yeah, I
one.
guess you're right. It was the year before, wasn't it? So still, though, I think that gives it. So I'm going back up on the other side of this. Is I had a 9 last week. I'm going to a 10 on classicness on this.
Ditto, ditto, ditto. 10, 10, 10.
Just when I think you couldn't get any stupider, Dana, you go and do something like this and totally redeem yourself. It's a 10.
Yeah. The graphics are better. The score is better. The acting is better. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to 100% agree. There's a reason why about once a year I go down to my basement with my Bose 700 soundbar and subwoofer and play this at ridiculously stupidly loud volumes so that my rabbit is like, what the fuck is going on? My wife is usually out of town when that happens, by the way. This is one I love to revisit as much as possible, but without being like I watch that all the time flick. So 10 out of 10 for me.
There are certain things you have to do only when your wife's out of town, like listen to the Who.
Oh, fuck yeah.
My wife hates the Who. I got to play the Who at about a 9, if not 10. Otherwise, it's just not the Who. And she just goes nuts.
Okay. We have one primary category left. We have 2 10s on the board and 2 9s. One near a 10. Andrew, this could make or break what we have here. We have a lot of different tests for rewatchability, a lot of subjective tests on this one. I will let the likely 10s out of the box first. Rob, you have not yet led a category. We'll let you start here.
I don't know if there's something better than Baja Blast, but like rewatchability, I will watch this movie 1,000 times. If somebody was like, we're going to torture you by making you watch watch Empire Strikes Back 1,000 times, I'll be like, okay, can it be 2,000, please? Like, can I have the remote so I can watch segments over again because I love them? Like, I think the rewatchability on this is tremendous because it is so well crafted, from action scenes to actual scenes that are still progressing the story, but also that are lower energy. I really think there's a lot of variety to this. And even though Dana says it's an incomplete movie, I really think it is a bridge level movie that is only potentially, I don't want to say matched, but at least given a run for its money by The Two Towers in the Lord of the Rings series. I think that is the only bridge movie that I've seen or heard of potentially that has the ability to be as rewatchable, as fun, as like you're pulling for the good guys the entire time, and they just aren't having their day. And it's just, I think that we need to remember sometimes that makes good cinema, and that makes a good story. That the good guys, while we want them to win all the time in the real world, obviously that's not very true. But when you turn things like that on its head, I think that's where you really get the rewatchability.
Okay, we have 110 down. I will say, based on my calculations so far, we only need 8.05 points to tie it for the number 1 slot. Okay.
Dana, don't fuck this up.
He's gonna...
Andrew, go right ahead.
Okay. I've been very carefully keeping my calculator on hand for this episode to see how close we were going to be pushing it to the top. Unless Dana comes in and just carpet bombs this whole fucking thing at the end.
He might. Be careful.
Because his rewatchability scores...
You do not know the power of the dark side.
As someone who has been listening to Gmote intensely for what feels like a long time now, Dana can throw a curveball on rewatchability. There's no doubt about that. From my standpoint, though, I've watched this movie more times than I could ever imagine. Now, as a kid, again, like I said earlier at the very start of this, I would typically watch these movies, the OG trilogy. I would watch all 3 of them just in back to back to back. As a kid, Return of the Jedi was the one I watched most frequently. So if I had to pull one that I watched with the most rewatchable number of times, it was Jedi, because I was young. I liked the payoff, obviously. But as I've gotten older, I always go back to this one and the first one the most. And it's one of those things, when the prequels came out, I was old enough to like go back and watch these again over and over. So I lived through them as a child. Then as the prequels came out, I lived through them again. Then when the more recent movies came out, Force Awakens, etc., I would go back with my friends and we would go back and watch these OG movies. So I've just like watched them. My kids love them. Like Rob said, if you tortured me with making me watch this movie over and over, it would be like the best thing on earth. This would be one of, like, if I had desert island movies, the OG Star Wars would be very much at the top of the list. So it's a 10. I mean, you know that's going to be a 10.
I did know it was going to be a 10. I did call that. So we have 20 in the bucket for a 10 average so far. Dad, would you like to go last, or do you want me to?
Yes, I do.
You want to go last? Okay.
Evil man.
I want to go last.
Oh, he's going to play spoiler. God damn it.
Okay. If this was a personal ranking, if I were truly subjective, I would have a very difficult time not making this probably a 9.5. It's not among the films that I put on immediately, like when I'm sick, but it's pretty damn close. This movie is very easy to rewatch for me. It has almost no slow moments. Maybe the lone exception for me is when first Luke is on Dagobah, and the kind of leading up to Yoda kind of revealing himself, that gets a little bit slow for me. But other than that, the rest of this movie is just one thing after the next, after the next, after the next, of just great moments, great scenes. I love the score. I think I messaged Andrew while I was watching it, the first of the like 3 times that I've done for this episode. This movie just slaps so hard, it loses superlatives. However, I know that I, in my subjectivity, am not the only people that exist in the movie audience. And there are a group of people that are alienated by Star Wars, just don't either like it or don't like the fan base that has now become as a part of it, that just don't enjoy these movies. And that's fine. So if I were to take a little bit out of that, do the fanboys probably make up the majority of the rewatchability for this? Absolutely. Is this probably their most singularly rewatchable movie? I don't know, because it's really hard to tell differentiation between the 3 trilogy movies now that you can easily watch all 3 of them just right in a row as the full story. If you were to pick out one of them, I think most people might gravitate to this one, but I'm not sure completely. So from that standpoint, I'm going to go with an 8.5.
Heresy.
And go out on the limb there that there is enough of the movie watching audience that just does not appreciate these in the same way that we do subjectively.
So will you, from now on, from this point forward, always include the general populace in your rewatchability scores beyond just your own?
I've been trying.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
I've
Like, I'm going
tried
to
to
hold your
sep-
feet to the fire on that from now, because if you're going to fuck up this score for that, you better keep that every goddamn episode.
I'm well aware. I let off. I said if this was a personal feeling, but realistically, if we're going back, my affinity for Ocean's 11 and Ocean's 13, I think I listed those both as a 10 for rewatchability. Does that really make sense? I think the reason I've gone in this direction is we've established so many scores that for certain movies are favorites of mine, but maybe are not shared between the general public.
But
So I think I had a 9 on the original OG Star Wars. I have an 8.5 here.
I think that's countered sometimes by the fact that things can be objectively good. That even though I don't like, I'm trying to think of a good example here. Let's say there's a tremendous independent film from France that sweeps the Oscars this year. I may fucking hate it. That doesn't make it not good. You know, I don't know if you have to compensate for that much, because there are some times where you can just be like, I hate this, but objectively it's a 9.
I can't believe you gave the OG Star Wars a higher rewatchability than this, Tom.
Man, I love that Andrew brought the math. This is hilarious.
You need to do some serious reevaluation of yourself over the next 60 seconds, Tom.
60 seconds.
All right. So now I get my stage.
Here comes the bomb.
To be fair, based on even where I have my score, the fact that you two came in higher, all Dana has to score here
Don't give him any math.
Don't tell him a number. Do
Don't
not
give him
tell
the
him a
math.
number. No.
is a 3.7 to tie at number 1.
You can give him that, Matt. That's okay.
That's the small bar he has to clear for rewatchability on
I don't know.
The Empire Strikes Back.
He's a talented attorney. He can probably do that, actually.
No, because I don't let him give anything but 0.5 or 0.
How many pickles you got on this test, Dana? A lot of pickles.
Are you trying to
Are you
tickle
ready?
his pickle?
No thanks. Anyway. All right. Are you ready for this? All right. Here it is.
It's going to be a 3.4. It's going to be a 3.4.
I think this is more important than the actual final drum roll.
Yep.
All right. So let me set the stage for this. Okay. I saw this in theaters when I was 16 years old. I know I watched it at least once on HBO when it was released on HBO a few years later, back when HBO first started and they started doing the Star Wars films on HBO back in the late 80s, early 90s, that type of time. I watched the film with Tom at one point in time. And I probably haven't watched it again since then. These films are fun. They're good, quality films. I think I enjoyed them. I don't live for them. They are not part of my soul like they are some people. I don't walk around quoting lines from them all the time because they just don't really resonate with me. But from a rewatchability standpoint, this is what I will say, which is, yes, there's something that I will watch again. And if it's available or if somebody wants to watch it, I'll watch it. Am I going to go out of my way to watch it again? Probably not. And I will tell you this. When I finished it, I'm sitting here going, it just felt like empty. Like, okay, so what did I do? I watched Return of the Jedi immediately afterwards so that I had resolution. And quite frankly, when I'm going to watch this film again, I am going to want to watch Return of the Jedi immediately after so that I have resolution of the story. Otherwise, it just feels very incomplete to me. So I am not going lower than my score for Star Wars, nor am I going to go higher than my score for Star Wars. I was at a 7.5 for Star Wars, and I am at a 7.5 for Empire.
Thank God.
So that is a 9 average between the 4 of us.
I would like to also quickly throw out, as somebody who just happens to have the full Gmode scoring list on hand at any given time, Dana is officially on record saying that The Waterboy, is more rewatchable than Empire Strikes Back. I'll throw that
It
out.
is to me because I love comedies. If you want to see me rewatch a film more often than once, it will be a comedy.
I just had to find one. I pulled one randomly.
That's fine. I don't have any problem with that. Rewatchability has nothing to do with quality or the method of the scoring. It's all about my mood on a given day. And quite frankly, I live through some serious shit all day long. And so sometimes just throwing something on stupid and laughing is all I can do. It's why I have every episode of Hogan's Heroes saved on my cache on DirecTV so that I can throw on something inane and stupid and just sit and veg out for a half hour or an hour.
To be fair, there are days where I also feel like I'd rather slap hands than go back to the galaxy far, far away, but it depends. It very much depends. So that is a 9 average between the 4 of us. Moving to audience score, we had a 94% for Google users and a 97% for Rotten Tomato users, giving us a 9.55. So to repeat the categories, for Legacy, we had a 10. For Impact and Significance, we had a 9.75. For Novelty, we have a 9.13. For Classicness, we had a 10. For Rewatchability, it was a 9. And for Audience Score, we had a 9.55. That means we currently have a score of 57.43. And as you probably guessed, it is comfortably, far and away, the number 1 film. It is almost a full point ahead of The Dark Knight.
Let's go, people. We did it.
Yes, it is 0.95 points ahead of The Dark Knight. So, Rob, you have now been on the top 2 scoring films, which are both sequels.
That's pretty good.
Andrew, how long ago did I predict that this was going to end up being number 1?
I'm trying to think how long ago we booked this, like me coming on, and I can't remember if Rob was already fixed on the episode at that point. I think he was, right?
Rob has been scheduled for this episode and for Lord of the Rings for multiple years.
Yeah, so it was probably like mid last year that I jumped on board for this with you, and I think it was at that time. So we're talking probably a year you were anticipating this going number 1, and I was just worried that Dana was going to be the one that really stirred the pot, and he tried it. But you know what?
No, but
to Dana's credit, he came through with some big time scores.
Maybe eventually one day we'll break the full 60 barrier, but it is not likely.
With what?
To get, I never thought we'd get a film at 57. So this is quite considerable to have it at almost 57.5 points.
I mean, this is a journey for me, I'll admit. I mean, there's a lot of films I've had to watch that I never had any interest in watching through the years. And so I've learned, and there's things it was reversed because it's supposed to be that when you were young, you listened to all kinds of music. And then as you got older, you became more select and you only wanted to listen to I've gone just the opposite, which is the older I get, the more diverse my music playlist is. And the same with films. I'm sitting here things that I never wanted to see or watch, I'm watching. And so I'm enjoying and trying them and whatever. So consider it growth. And am I all over the board on some categories? Yeah. Well, I can't explain it other than just my thought process on a given day.
You're the spice of the show, Dana. It's what makes it fun. It's all in.
He's definitely the mascot of the show.
Can we get a Dana plushie?
You might.
15 times.
Oh my! That's what I want for 15 times. A Dana plushie.
How about a Dana bobblehead?
I hate bobbleheads. I used to work at Miller Park. No.
Yeah, as long as it's not a Dana furry, I'm happy.
Well, Andrew, you did say this was going to be the most special.
I had a feeling this was going to be one for the ages.
I think there have been at least 5 or 6 of like the greatest lines pulled out for this one. This is going to be fun to edit. It's going to be long, but it's going to be fun.
Yes, it'll be a good time.
All while I'm studying for my last final.
Hey, it's all right.
All right. Let's get to remaining questions and finish this one off. Why does Vader follow the Millennium Falcon but not Luke's X-Wing?
He's a dipshit?
My guess is that, well, first off, when the Millennium Falcon leaves, he has an easy track on them to begin with. And since they can't jump to light speed, then he can follow them much more easily. Whereas Luke, he never had a true bead on him when he left the Hoth system, and then he goes to light speed immediately. I also would question why the X-Wing fighters can be a solo manned fighter that can go to light speed, but the TIE fighters supposedly cannot.
Are you ready for this? Dumping this on you. This is expanded universe lore. The Incom T-65 X-Wing is designed as a strategic fighter that is supposed to be able to go to light speed, unlike the Imperial TIE fighter, which is designed to be hosted by a mothership to prevent pilot defection.
Ah.
In the first movie, you see that TIE fighter that goes over the Millennium Falcon, and he must be lost, must have been part of a convoy. They can't, because the Empire is just that evil, and TIE fighter pilots are, of course, expendable. So if you knew you were cannon fodder in an airplane, if you will, wouldn't you try to fly that somewhere else? Sure would. That's why there's no hyperdrives.
Rob speaks my love language talking about expanded universe.
Oh, yeah.
I read so many of those books growing up, and it made me so sad when they just said none of this was canon.
Disney!
Yeah, they would have been so much better selling it to Paramount or Warner Brothers.
So, it's like, I was like, Paramount, and just Warner Brothers, like, oh, God.
Prime.
No, but basically, the Rebel starfighters are designed to be much more rugged operationally, and to be able to operate more alone. Kind of the difference between the design of something like a B-2 bomber, which those all live in Missouri, and they do their shit from Missouri anywhere in the world. But X-Wings, the Y-Wings, the A-Wings, the B-Wings, they're all designed generally to be much more of the kind of bush plane, more C-130 Hercules, kind of landed anywhere, take care of it with spare parts that you might craft from a less than perfect manufacturing line, things like that. Even though there is big business behind the X-Wing itself, income in the system, in the expanded universe, it's actually,
Thought crossed my mind as to worse than Paramount or Warner's if it was a Weinstein property.
Ooh,
there's no money in the world that they could have afforded $4 billion to
Miramax. Yep, right there.
Not to mention, I think Miramax is a subsidiary of Disney.
Oh yeah, it is now, I think. Yeah, you're right.
Anyway,
there's no conflict there.
Well, the only thing worse would have been if Conclave was produced by Miramax.
That is, you should be ashamed of yourself.
I'll go say my Hail Marys in the background after we're done. Okay, moving on. How does Obi-Wan not know Luke has a sister since he delivered them both? It's like the same thing where he doesn't know he has the droids from before. Did he have complete amnesia on Tatooine?
Okay, so this to me is always the thing where, Rob, maybe you remember this too, Tom, maybe you do as well. I remember growing up, there was this legend that George Lucas had 12 films planned out back before the prequels. There was this idea that he had this huge, all of these chapters, and I feel like this debunks a little bit of that theory that he had this grand meticulous plan, because when you really got to the nuts and bolts of the prequel, you're like, wait a minute, this shit just doesn't jive all the way. We all were led to believe that everything just fit nice and seamlessly. This is a clear plot hole that the prequels created, unfortunately, and it's not the only one, but the prequels muddied the waters in a substantial way, and I think it kind of diminished this legend mythos around Lucas having this grand plan for 12 planned films.
I think it reduces George Lucas in a lot of his interviews to John Lovitz.
What?
The liar. Yeah, I had it all planned.
That's the ticket?
Yeah. It was going to star Morgan Fairchild.
That would have been a different movie.
Tom, to answer your question, is it possible that because there are so many astromech and interpreter droids throughout the entire galaxy that R2-D2 is not an uncommon name? I mean, especially when you're using 4 characters.
Yeah, you can explain away the R2D2 and C3PO thing. Although, to be fair, he was there at the original, like, seeing C3PO being born, essentially, by
Right, yeah.
Anakin's hand. Also, I wonder why Darth Vader never seems to know R2D2 or C3PO. Also doesn't quite make sense. But you can't explain away that he just legitimately doesn't seem to know that Luke has a sister. He's been looking after him for probably 30, 40 years. Well, I guess that's not quite right. That's
19 years.
Yeah. All right. So 19
That's the
years.
span of time between episode 3 and episode 4.
Yeah. So, okay, but you've got a
2
19-year
decades
gap.
still, yeah.
How much was he like meditating in the Force too much to remember all of the details?
There was a lot of Arrakis Dune spice on that planet that was fucking up his mind.
I mean, the dude's last name is...
Maybe it was the green milk from Last Jedi.
You reach a certain age, it's hard to get your force up.
I mean, the actor's name was Alec Guinness. Maybe he was just drunk all the time, you know?
I got my Force up. Okay. Then, what are the logistics of the space asteroid worm? Now, I say this because supposedly they flew like deep inside it. And then they had to fly quite a bit back out. How do you not go that deep into the worm but never reach its stomach to start digestion?
I mean, it's a really big worm.
That's what she said.
Maybe it's really a long tongue.
Okay. Moving on.
My question to this question is, don't you have better things to do with your time, Tom?
Then ask Star Wars questions? No. How does Luke learn the Force in like a few days? Because my other question to piggyback on this one is, what's the timeline of this movie? Supposedly they're chasing the Millennium Falcon. We don't know how long they're inside the worm on the asteroid, but how is Luke on Dagobah for like a week? And supposedly he's already become like half a Jedi?
Fast learner, worked for Daisley Ripley.
So I went down a huge Reddit hole over the last couple of days. Like,
dangerous.
yeah,
Dangerous, Will Robinson.
there's a lot of, and I say this lovingly because I'm one, but there's a lot of Star Wars dorks on Reddit, and they
Really?
Reddit was created for Star Wars dorks. What are you talking about?
So
As
here's-
were Pez dispensers.
So there's 4 days that pass on camera throughout the film. However, most true diehard Star Wars fans' consensus is that the entirety of this film takes place between 3 weeks, which is the minimum amount of time shown in the movie, or it could take place in up to 6 months, because Han and Leia need time to make it to Bespin without light speed, and we never truly have a clear sense of time for how long Luke is training with Yoda. Like, there's nothing explicit in the text to tell you the length of time in that middle chunk of the film. So in theory, this could take place over the course of 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, etc. So unlike my biggest problem with The Last Jedi, and we do not have enough time in a day for me to talk about my many problems with The Last Jedi, but one of my main gripes with that movie is it's supposed to take place in this very short period of time because there's this giant ship coming for the good guys, and while that's happening, another group of them go off to a goddamn casino planet and spend days there diddling around, and it's like the timeline doesn't make any sense in The Last Jedi, where at least this movie is ambiguous with time, I would say.
You could also have the effect that since it is the Force, Yoda could just speed it through. It's like once you're in the Force, you
Just
can
kinda
run
jams
at
it in.
twice the normal speed of everybody else.
Of course, Dad would suggest a Deus Ex Machina here, but all right. All right. Any other remaining questions for anyone else?
Yes. Was Admiral Ozzel a rebellion sympathizer? Why did he come out of hyperspace so close to the Hoth system? Give them a heads up. Because he's an admiral. He wouldn't make that mistake. Especially if he knows he can die.
Good question.
Well, we have
I like
people running all over the universe in spaceships. And only one time do you see in the entire film anyone eat. Where the hell do they store their food?
There's the stew that Yoda makes, and they're like granola bar thing. So there's 2.
Yeah. Carrie Fisher offers the little teddy bear guy, here, want something to eat? Yeah, okay. That's it. It's like, what do you carry these things around, or like you have these granola bars that like feed you for a year, or
What are you expecting here, that Harrison Ford was going to act like Brad Pitt? He was just going to be eating every scene he had?
Right.
Hey, Chewie, you want some chili?
My big question for this movie, every time I go back to it, it's really just like in the whole Star Wars world. I can't think of another movie or franchise or whatever that has a character that we collectively as a society pronounce their name one way. And yet I went down a very deep rabbit hole. George Lucas is adamant that it is Han Solo. And we all call him Han Solo. All of us do. And in the movie, multiple characters call him different things. Some call him Han, some call him Han. But it seems to me that George Lucas, who I've heard multiple times say Han Solo, he is very clear it's Han Solo. And we just as a society have decided, sorry, George, we're going to claim this name as Han Solo. And I do it, and we all do it. And to me, I'm just like, can you think of another scenario where there's a character that exists in the world of film, and we've just decided that we're taking that name versus whatever the creator has made? Because it's Han Solo.
Does it count, Andrew, if there is another example in actual Star Wars?
Sure.
Because Chewbacca is often called Chewbacca. Alec Guinness calls him that, and I think Billy D. Williams' Lando does as well. They call him Chewbacca. Actually, no. Yeah, well, he calls him Chewie. Sorry. Alec Guinness does call him Chewbacca in episode 4, and it's Chewbacca. My other question for us here also is, what are the promotion and recruitment standards for the Imperial Navy? Vader is choking out admirals and captains left, right, and center. Like you could be, this is like going to work and somebody just shoots your boss and says, you're in charge now, Bill. Like,
that sounds really familiar, though, unfortunately, to our current time, my friend.
That's fair. But I mean, like, usually there's like an HR process involved with that. And they kind of like some of that. But like, I feel like Vader, they're dragging bodies off the bridge.
Yeah. Who wants the job? No, that's okay. I don't need to be promoted.
Right.
Yeah, I'll go back to the Kylo Ren on SNL undercover boss.
All right, that's the question I have. Is there like a ceiling on IQ level for a stormtrooper? It's like, well, you're above an 80. You don't qualify.
So, any other questions? Hearing none, I want to thank...
Dang, I have one more. I was wondering why they were looking at a whole galaxy at the last scene. Are they like way outside the whole thing? Why are they looking at what is clearly a whole galaxy? They should be looking at something else in that scene. Up there with Imperial Navy recruitment processes. Mysteries we'll never know.
My guess is it's like Australia with the recruitment process. Oh, you were about to be in prison? Oh, join the Imperial Navy.
I mean, wasn't Han? At some point in time, he was supposed to be a Navy officer at one point, I think.
I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've watched Solo, which is better than people give it credit for. But anyway, I would like to thank both of our guests for being with us in obviously what is a seminal episode of the show. I very much enjoyed doing this with both of you. I very much enjoy when both of you are on the show. Rob, you will next be back with us for The Lord of the Rings next December. Andrew, you are back with us next summer for La La Land.
That's a long time for both of us. It's like 18 months for me.
Well, I mean, I make the schedule, but
I know.
I allow people to choose what they would like to be on. And as you've said before, Rob, you may be running out of movies that you want to come back for.
I only go
There's always new
every 8
movies being
years.
released.
Well, there's always new sequels for Rob to revisit.
Coming soon, Gladiator 3. Kill me.
That might be the subtitle. Anyway, but again, I would like to thank both of you for being on. Please remind us, Rob, what are you working on and where can people find you?
Certainly. Folks can find me at westportstudiosllc.com. Of course, Westport Studios produces great B2B podcasts for people. You can also find me on LinkedIn. And again, looking to see if that face gains thing takes off for me. I might actually have another little secret project coming up. We'll maybe tease that next time I'm on here in a year and a half when that's had a chance to get some legs. But definitely, if you're in the B2B space, look me up. Would love to connect with you and have you follow and show you some great content. Make sure I can follow and find some of yours too.
And Andrew, if the lights haven't gone down on Broadway, what are you working on and where can people find you?
Well, you can find me at the Revisionist Almanac on all the social media places. At Rev Almanac is the handle. Anywhere you get your podcasts, YouTube, just like Tom and Dana, I've got video format. And then just chugging along with stuff. 1975, 1976 years in film going on right now over the summer. And Tom and Dana, you guys will be joining me in 1982, so that'll be a lot of fun.
Excellent. And we just lost Dana, going near hour number 3 on this particular podcast. I know that won't be the official recording time for everybody else in the ether, but remaining thoughts will be undermined by the fact that I don't think I need to provide unilateral remaining thoughts for this one. So we'll just skip ahead and say that'll do it for us this week. Thank you for listening. So be it, Jedi. Next week, for our 262nd episode, we welcome back Adam Vanderwerf and film critic Adam Freed of MovieArcher.com to finish our trip through the original trilogy of Star Wars with Return of the Jedi from 1983. Directed by Richard Marquand, starring Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, and Billy D. Williams. You won't want to miss that one, so watch ahead of the show by searching the Real Good app to find where it's streaming for you. That's REELGOOD. Please like, follow, rate, and review, or whatever on whichever platform you have so that more can join in our fun. You can also email the show at thenewronniestudios.com or at greatestaltimemoviepodcast@gmail.com, or find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, or TikTok at the handle @GMODpodcast. The Greatest Movie of All Time is a production of Brian Duncan Studios. Our show is mixed, edited, and written by Thomas Duncan. Our music is thanks to Purple Planet Music. Our distributor is Captivate FM. Our technical provider is Riverside FM.